Now, it's funny when you are a kid and you really know your parents well, there are things that you love about them and things you hate about them. Now, some of you know what I'm talking about, and then other of you said, "Oh, egads, how could you hate anything about your parents?" Well, you may have that type of relationship. I love my father, but I am cut from the cloth. And if you think I'm a preacher and a little demanding and a little in your face, and I'll tell you what to do, you should meet my father, the Reverend Ron. That's what we call him, Rev Ron. Now, as I look back at my 42 years of being on this planet, there are certain key moments, and I think it takes until you're 42 years of age to really determine that your father, at the time, you didn't really want to listen to them. But your father really does have a couple of key nuggets that you take. But when you're in your 20s, you think that they just hound you. And so I want to teach you, and I want to share with you a lesson that if my father was here, I would tell this story, and I've told it 100 times. This is a lesson that he taught me that was extremely valuable. We grew up in a small town right outside of West Des Moines, Iowa. We lived out in the country, and we had like 2 to 3 acres. And so when we got together with the neighbors, it was a big deal because we didn't have running the streets, lots of kids going all over. Well, you don't really get to choose a lot of variety in kids, and there were 2 girls next door, the Banta girls. Oh, Chris Banta is cute. So we always liked to go over and play with the Banta girls and types of things. And I remember one day in particular that was kind of stunning to me. And the day in particular is that I had Chris Banta as we were talking and we were playing, and Chris Banta, she put her hands on her hips and she's like 8 years old and she says, "Is your dad a drug dealer?" Now that happens to be one of the most odd questions that anybody would ask anybody. Is your dad a drug dealer? Well, of course, I'm 8 years old, 10 years old, and I think, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Is my dad a drug dealer? She goes, well, my parents, I heard them talking, and your dad doesn't have a real job like everybody else. I mean, everybody else gets up at 7:30 and goes to work, and they come home at 5 o'clock. And your dad, he's never around. I went, really? They go, yeah. I mean, some days he works, some days he doesn't. Some days, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, he's mowing the grass, and then he'll come home at midnight. I know, my mom's been looking out the window. Well, kids in their innocence, of course, I go into my house, and my dad's laying on the couch because he's exhausted, not only because he's had 4 kids in a 4-year period of time. Oh, he loved my mom for those 4 years. But he paid for it for the rest of his life. He's laying on the couch, and I came in, and I said, "Dad, are you a drug dealer?" He looked at me like, "What in the world are you saying to me?" I said, "Well, the Banta girls think you're a drug dealer." He goes, why would anybody say that? I said, "Because you don't have a real job like everybody else. You don't get up in the morning and the bus picks you up and takes you into the job and you take your little lunch pail and you come home at 5. He goes, "Oh." They said, "Sometimes you work at 10 and then you work at midnight and work on Saturdays, and sometimes you got an airplane and you just leave. You're gone for a week. What do you do, Dad?" Well, see, my dad was in the life insurance business, and this is very hard for an 8-year-old. I don't know if I was 8 or I was 10, but this is hard to teach a kid what life insurance is. And so my dad tried to make it simple for me. I was a little remedial at the time. And so he said, "I protect people's lives." I said, "Well, you're a fireman." He said, "No." "Well, you're a policeman." I said, "No." He said, "Son, what I do is I make sure there's enough money that if something tragic was to happen to one of your friends or somebody's family, I make sure that I give them money so that they're taken care of." "I don't get it." He said, "Son, let me explain to you exactly what I do." And so with having 4 kids, there's toys and everything all over, and the little wisdom that I want to share with you is in this little pocket right here. I carry it with me because I like to use this story a lot. It has become quite meaningful to me, and as for yourself as business owners, I hope that it becomes meaningful for you. You can make it any way that you want. My dad looked around the carpet and he says, "Rob, pick up those marbles right there." And so I picked up the 3 little marbles, and he says, "This is what Daddy does." He says, "I get up in the morning and I take these 3 marbles and I put them in my left-hand pocket. I go out and I find somebody who's willing to talk to me. I tell them what I do. I ask them if they'll buy for me. And whether they buy for me or not, I take a marble from my left-hand pocket, I move it to my right, I have 2 left. I go out and find somebody else who's willing to talk to me. I tell them what I do. I ask them if they'll buy for me. And whether they buy for me or not, I move my marble from my left-hand pocket, I move it to my right, I've got 1 left. I go out. I find somebody who's willing to talk to me. I tell them what I do. I ask them if they'll buy for me. And whether they buy for me or not, I move the marble from my left-hand pocket, I move it to my right, and Daddy comes home. You see, son, people make things in life way too complicated. I don't. I know that if I get up in the morning and I have 3 people that I need to talk to, you'll always have this house, you'll always have those clothes, you'll always have these toys that you leave all over the floor. You'll always have the nice Christmas, you'll always have food on the table if Daddy just moves marbles. Some days that takes me till 10 o'clock in the morning. Some days that takes me till 12 o'clock at night. Some Saturdays I have to go in because I haven't found enough people to move the marbles that I've got to do. Sometimes I can't find enough people to move marbles, so I get on an airplane and I go to another town. And I find people who are willing to talk to me. I ask them if they buy for me. But at the end of the day, it's very simple what I do. I set a goal for what I need and know what the results are, and Daddy moves marbles.